Hello and welcome to Sleep Flow Studio. I'm Ducky, and this is your space to relax, unwind, and drift into peaceful sleep. Here we explore soft whispers, soothing sounds, and calming stories designed to help your mind let go and flow gently into rest. Whether it's the quiet hum of nature, gentle bedtime tales, or the delicate rhythm of whispers, every sound is created to guide you into deep relaxation and serene sleep. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let the flow of calm carry you into your dreams. Thank you for joining the Sleep Flow Studio, where every night is a journey to peace. The night began without a sound. No wind moved through the tall grass. No branch dared to sway. The sky above the valley was soft and unbroken, painted with the faint shimmer of 1,000 drifting stars. It was the kind of silence that made you believe the world itself had paused to listen. Far below the starlit ridge there was a small village no one had marked on any map. The houses there were made of pale wood and curved roofs, their windows always half open to the breath of the forest. And in the middle of that village lived a woman named Elara. She was known quietly as the Whisper Collector. Every evening after the lamps were dimmed and the last cups of tea had cooled, she would wander out beyond the edge of the village carrying nothing but a lantern and a glass jar. The villagers said she gathered the things people left unsaid, the sighs before sleep, the forgotten words between friends, the dreams that never made it past morning. Some said she had done this since before the first snowfall, before the first seed had ever sprouted in the soil. Others thought she was simply lonely, and the jars she carried home each night were empty, filled only with the hum of her own imagination. No one really knew. That night, however, the air carried a stillness so deep that even Elara hesitated before stepping into it. She closed her door softly behind her, lifted her lantern, and whispered to the night, "If you're listening, tonight, tell me something new." The forest answered with the faint rustle of silver leaves. She followed a narrow trail where the grass glowed faintly under her steps. Fireflies moved like drifting stars at her ankles. Each sound, the brush of her sleeve, the soft crunch of her boots, seemed to echo endlessly, as if the woods were made of mirrors reflecting back her every motion. After some time, she reached the old bridge that crossed the stream, a bridge woven from branches and age. Beneath it, water whispered secrets too small for words. Elara leaned over the railing, listening. Then she opened her jar. A faint glow rose from the surface of the stream, gathering like mist. The water's murmurs curled into her jar in slow spirals, as if drawn by the rhythm of her breathing. When she sealed the lid, the glow faded, leaving only a faint hum. But this night was different. From the far side of the stream came a sound, so faint she almost mistook it for the wind. A voice. "Don't take what you don't understand." Elara froze. Her heart moved like a ripple beneath her ribs. She turned her lantern toward the trees, its light trembling against the trunks. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer came. Only the silence returned, dense and thick as fog. She thought perhaps that sleep had begun to play tricks on her. Still, she could not shake the feeling that the forest itself had spoken, and not in warning, but in worry. When she finally returned home, the jar on her table glowed softly through the night, humming like a distant melody. She drifted to sleep beside it, the sound gently pulling her downward, like a tide into dreams. In her sleep, she dreamt of a place beyond her valley, a vast field of glass towers, each one humming with whispers she recognized but could not name. As she walked among them, she saw her reflection in every surface, older, younger, multiplied infinitely. And every reflection was holding a jar. When she woke, dawn had already spilled across her window. The glow inside her jar was gone, but in its place was something new, a faint whisper that lingered just at the edge of hearing. "Ilara, they remember you." The morning came wrapped in pale gold. Mist curled between the trees like slow-moving thoughts, and the village rooftops shimmered with dew. Ilara stood by her window, her fingers resting lightly on the jar she had filled the night before. It was cool to the touch now, still, silent, and strangely heavy, as if the whisper inside had settled into something deeper than sound. She brought it close to her ear. Nothing. Only when she exhaled, slow and deliberate, did she feel it again. The faintest pulse beneath the glass, like a second heartbeat that wasn't hers. Ilara set it down and poured herself a cup of tea. The steam rose in ghostly shapes, curling into small, wordless forms that reminded her of faces she half remembered. For a moment she thought about not going out that night, but curiosity has a quiet persistence, the same kind that makes tides return and shadows stretch. By dusk she had packed her lantern again. This time the path through the forest felt different. The trees seemed to lean closer, their trunks carved with fine lines she'd never noticed before. Not words exactly, but markings that looked like the curve of a whisper caught in wood. As she walked, the air trembled. From somewhere deep among the pines came a faint music. It wasn't from any instrument she knew. It sounded like threads of wind drawn through hollow stone, rising and falling in a rhythm that made her heart beat slow. She followed it. The forest opened into a clearing she had never seen before, a hollow bathed in silver blue light, where the ground was carpeted in soft moss that glowed faintly with every step. In the center stood an arch made of roots, twisted together like the ribs of some ancient creature. Beyond the arch, the air shimmered, not solid, not transparent, like the surface of still water trembling slightly. Ilara stood there for a long time. She had heard stories of places like this, boundaries where dreams touch the waking world, where whispers turned into voices if you listened long enough. But those were stories meant for children, to keep them from wandering too far. And yet here it was. She stepped closer. The air beneath the arch rippled and a sound rose from it, soft, rhythmic, familiar. Her own breath echoed back to her in perfect sync. Then another layer joined it, a second breath almost the same as hers but not quite. "Ilara," it said, "you've come back." Her fingers trembled on the handle of her lantern. "Who are you?" she whispered. The voice came not from the air but from inside her, or perhaps from behind her where the night pressed close. "We are what you gathered," it said. "The things forgotten, the words left behind, you kept us safe, but now we remember you." She wanted to step back, but the moss beneath her feet seemed to hold her gently in place like a soft insistence not to leave. "I don't understand," she said. "I only collect whispers, nothing more." The air shimmered again. The glow deepened, turning from silver to pale gold. In it, shapes began to form, faint outlines of faces, familiar and strange at once. The first was of a child laughing softly. The second, a man humming an old tune. The third, a woman whispering something she couldn't hear. They weren't ghosts. They were echoes, pieces of moments that had never been finished. Each one drifted forward, dissolving into air as they passed through her. Each time they did, Ilara felt something return to her, small fragments of warmth, sorrow, and memory she hadn't realized she'd lost. They weren't ghosts. They were echoes, pieces of moments that had never been finished. Each one drifted forward, dissolving into air as they passed through her. Each time they did, Ilara felt something return to her, small fragments of warmth, sorrow, and memory she hadn't realized she'd lost. Then came one voice stronger than the rest. "Ilara," it said again. "Do you remember the lake?" Her breath caught. There was a lake once, far beyond the ridge. She had gone there as a child, following the sound of wind through reeds. That was the first time she had heard a whisper that didn't belong to anyone. "You were the first," the voice continued. "The first to listen. The first to keep what the world forgot." Ilara's eyes filled with a quiet ache. "And who are you?" "We are the silence between dreams," it answered softly. "And we are growing louder." The light faded. The clearing dimmed. Only the hum of her lantern remained. When she returned home that night, the jar on her table began to glow again. Brighter this time, pulsing with rhythm. She sat beside it, her eyes heavy, but her mind restless. Before sleep took her, she whispered to the jar, "What happens when silence remembers?" The hum changed, soft, tender, almost like laughter. And then everything went dark. Ilara drifted through the night as though floating between breaths. In her dream, the air was pale and liquid, rippling like water when she moved. The stars above her were closer than they should have been, large, breathing things that pulsed softly with light. Each one seemed to whisper a single word as it passed, faint and musical, just beyond understanding. She reached out and one of them came to rest on her palm. It wasn't a star at all, but a tiny glass jar. Inside, a small glow moved like a heartbeat. When she opened it, the air around her filled with sound. Voices, thousands of them, overlapping like waves, laughing, humming, sighing. She turned in slow circles, trying to find where they came from, but there was no direction, only the endless shimmer of that dream sky. Then out of the hum, one voice became clear. "You woke us too soon." She turned, but the dream bent away from her, stretching thin. The world began to peel apart, sky into smoke, ground into shadow, and the whisper grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was speaking inside her chest. "You took what belonged to the wind," it said, "and now the wind remembers your name." Her heart began to ache with a rhythm that didn't feel like her own. She tried to speak, but her words scattered like dust. The voice sighed, almost tenderly. "You must return them." Alara woke with her breath caught halfway in her throat. Her lantern still flickered faintly beside her bed, though she couldn't remember lighting it. The jar glowed softly on the table, its light faintly pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She sat up and pressed her fingers to the glass. It was warm now, almost alive. The whisper inside was clearer than before. "Alara," it said, "you're drifting between what is kept and what is lost." She pulled her hand away, trembling. Outside, dawn was breaking, slow ribbons of rose and silver unraveling across the horizon, but the air felt heavy, as though the night refused to leave. That day she wandered the village trying to still her thoughts. The people greeted her kindly, unaware of the glow that followed her like a second shadow. Children waved. An old man selling bread asked if she'd been walking again at night. When she smiled, her reflection in his eyes shimmered as if made of something not entirely solid. By evening, she could no longer ignore the pull. She followed the forest path again, though now it felt less like walking and more like being guided. The deeper she went, the softer the world became, until even her footsteps seemed to dissolve into the moss. She reached the clearing where the root arch stood. The shimmer beneath it had changed. It moved more slowly now, as if aware of her. When she stepped closer, the air folded open like a curtain. This time she saw not faces, but places, each one flickering like a thought. A shore under endless moonlight, a ruined tower wrapped in vines, a field of feathers drifting upward instead of down. Her lantern dimmed. The voice returned, deeper, older. "You have carried us long enough. We were never meant to be owned." Alara whispered, "I was only listening." "Yes," said the voice, "and that is why we chose you." The glow from the arch swelled, filling the clearing. The ground trembled softly, though no wind stirred. Out of the light came hundreds of shapes, some no larger than sparks, others like ribbons of smoke that twisted around her. Each one brushed against her skin and left behind a whisper. Memories poured through her in fragments. A mother singing to her child, a promise made under rain, a farewell that never reached its listener. They were pieces of the world, sounds that had been left unfinished, and she somehow had gathered them all. "Why me?" she asked, her voice breaking like glass. The answer came like a breath at her ear. "Because you never tried to change what you heard. You simply kept it safe. But now the world has grown too quiet. It needs its voices back." Ilara looked down at her lantern. Its flame was nearly gone, flickering inside a thin shell of glass. She realized it wasn't a lantern at all. It was another jar, the first one she had ever carried. The whisper inside it pulsed once, twice, then faded completely. "What will happen if I let them go?" The forest stirred, every leaf trembling. "Then silence will learn to sing again." Ilara closed her eyes. The hum of the clearing rose like a lullaby. One by one, the jars she had collected, hidden on shelves beneath her bed beside her window, seemed to shatter in the distance, releasing faint notes into the wind. When she opened her eyes, the archway before her was gone. She stood there for a long while, the night pressing gently against her skin. Somewhere in the distance, the stream murmured her name, not in warning now, but in gratitude. Ilara smiled faintly. "Good night," she whispered to the world. The wind answered, "Sleep, collector," and the air finally was at peace. The forest felt different now, no longer just a collection of trees and shadows. It had become something alive in ways Ilara could not fully name. Each step she took left a faint ripple in the moss, as if the ground itself remembered her passage. Even the wind, gentle and warm, seemed to murmur with voices she had never heard before, echoes of the whispers she had freed. Ilara walked slowly, her lantern no longer needed. The air glowed softly with its own inner light, drifting around her in ribbons that twisted like slow-moving water. She could hear the faint hum of the world breathing, each note a pulse of something ancient and unseen. And then she realized the silence was dreaming. It wasn't empty anymore. It held shapes soft and pliant that shifted in ways her eyes could follow only if she let herself drift. Mountains of mist formed and melted into seas of silver grass. Trees bent their branches into shapes like arches, tunnels, and spirals. Even the stars above bent downwards, twining around her as though curious. Ilara felt her heart sink with the rhythm of the forest. Each beat, each breath, was a thread connecting her to the dream that the silence itself had begun to weave. From the center of the clearing, the air shimmered. A figure formed, tall, without distinct features, but somehow familiar. It moved gracefully, floating above the moss, its body woven entirely from the soft glow of memory and sound. "You have done well," it said, voice like wind over glass. "You returned what was held too long. You listened when no one else could. And now, the silence dreams because of you." Ilara's lips trembled. "What does that mean?" "It means," the figure whispered, "that the world has learned to carry its own music again. The echoes you gathered are free to find their place, and in their freedom, the silence itself begins to imagine, to shape, to breathe life into what had been quiet too long." The glowing figure drifted closer. Ilara could feel the warmth of it, not like heat, but like the calm of deep water, soothing and steady. "Do you need me?" she asked. "You will always be needed," it replied, "because there will always be whispers and the world will always forget parts of itself. But now you know how to return them. You know how to listen." A soft wind brushed her hair. The forest hummed, and in the hum, Ilara could hear fragments of her own voice, laughing, sighing, whispering. And it was not just her. It was the world speaking back. She closed her eyes and let the light of the dreaming forest wash over her. Shapes drifted past her like smoke, rivers bending into impossible loops, trees singing silently, the stars pulsing in gentle waves. She could feel herself floating, neither awake nor asleep, carried by the rhythm of the dreaming silence. In that moment she understood. The whispers had never belonged to her. They belonged to the world, and she had only been their keeper until it was ready to remember. She opened her eyes slowly. The glowing figure had vanished, leaving only the soft shimmer of the forest. The path home was clear, lined with ribbons of light that seemed to hum under her feet. She began to walk, each step gentle, her mind and body filled with calm she had never known before. When she returned to the village, dawn was breaking. The first light spilled over the rooftops, silver turning to gold. The jars she had kept were empty now, but their absence did not feel like loss. Instead, it felt like release, as though every whisper had found its way back to the world. Ilara sat by her window, the morning wind brushing her hair. Outside, the world was alive with faint, unspoken music, the echo of dreams made real. She closed her eyes and whispered softly to herself, "Good night, world." And for the first time in many years, she slept without a lantern, without a jar, without worry. Only the soft hum of the forest, carrying the dreams of silence, lulled her into a deep, endless rest. That evening the village was quieter than usual. Even the river seemed to hush, holding its breath as if waiting for something. Ilara stepped outside just as the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky into a soft gradient of rose and lavender. The air smelled faintly of dew and pine, and every leaf seemed to shimmer in the fading light. For the first time in years, she carried no jar. She carried only herself, her hands empty, her lantern unlit, and her mind open. As night fell, faint sounds began to drift through the air. At first they were almost imperceptible, the soft murmur of laughter that had no source, the distant whisper of a forgotten promise. a hum that felt like the memory of music she had once known. She paused, listening. The world was speaking again, and for the first time it was not asking her to hold it. It was sharing itself. Ilara walked slowly through the village. The whispers followed her, weaving through the streets like gentle ribbons of sound. Children playing in the twilight froze for a moment, tilting their heads as though they could hear something beyond sight. A baker in his shop stopped kneading dough, listening to a faint melody floating through the window. Even the cats perched on rooftops lifted their ears, as if understanding the language of the night. The whispers carried stories of first loves, of letters left unsent, of songs forgotten before the first note was played. They filled the air without clutter, layering themselves in harmony so soft that even a thought could not disturb it. Ilara felt a warmth bloom in her chest. This was what she had been waiting for, and not silence, not the jars, but the world itself remembering. She wandered into the forest, guided by a glow that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Shadows stretched and bent, forming arches, tunnels, and bridges of light. Each whisper she had once kept now traveled freely, brushing against leaves, drifting through moss, curling around stones. For the first time she realized she could hear the whispers as they had always wanted to be heard. Unbound, uncollected, alive. A soft wind brushed her face. Among the whispers, one voice stood out. It was deep, melodic, and familiar. "Ilara," it said. She followed it to a clearing she had never seen, even in her dreams. The ground was blanketed with silvery grass that glowed faintly under the stars. Small lights floated above it, like fireflies made of memory, carrying whispers with them. The voice spoke again. "We are grateful you have freed us." Ilara knelt in the grass, letting the whispers brush her skin. She felt every sigh, every secret, every forgotten word flow through her like a river. They were no longer confined, yet they carried a quiet gratitude, as if each one had been waiting just for her. "Will you return?" she whispered softly. The voice answered gently, echoing through the night. "When needed, always, but now the world can remember itself." She leaned back, gazing at the sky where the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with the whispers. For the first time, she felt the weight of her work lift completely. There was no burden, only a quiet, humming joy that filled the space between heartbeats. And as she lay down on the soft grass, the whispers swirled above her, cradling her in a lullaby made of voices, wind, and memory. The world was alive, singing softly, and she drifted into sleep deeper than she had ever known. A sleep where every dream was a note, and every note was freedom. Outside the clearing, the village slept too, wrapped in the gentle hum of returning whispers. And somewhere, in the quiet of the night, the world remembered itself for the first time in a very long while. The morning came slowly, painted in shades of pale gold and misty lavender. Elara awoke on the soft grass of the clearing, the whispers now faint, like echoes of a dream just remembered. For a moment, she wondered if she had truly slept, or if the night itself had carried her through some hidden world. As she rose, the forest around her seemed to shimmer with quiet magic. Leaves caught the light in ways she had never noticed before, each one tracing delicate patterns in the air, as if the wind itself had been taught to draw. Moss-covered stones hummed faintly when touched, and the faint glow of tiny floating lights danced along the path ahead. She began to walk, her steps slow and deliberate. The air carried soft murmurs of laughter and song, and every sound felt alive, aware of her presence. It wasn't long before she noticed the first of the hidden wonders. A small grove of trees, their trunks twisting into spiral shapes, their branches heavy with luminescent fruit. When she reached out and touched one, a gentle warmth spread through her fingertips. The fruit pulsed softly, each heartbeat a tiny whisper. Memories of sunrise, rain, and quiet moments shared long ago. She plucked one carefully and held it close. The whisper inside told a story of a faraway village, a mother teaching her child to sing, and the soft promise of a world where moments never truly vanish. Elara smiled, feeling a deep, gentle peace. She understood that these wonders were not just beauty. They were fragments of life itself, preserved in quiet, delicate forms. Further along the path, a stream appeared, its water moving slowly, almost as if it were thinking. When she peered into it, the surface reflected not her own face, but 1,000 fleeting images of the village she had left behind. People laughing, trees swaying in the wind, distant stars twinkling above the roofs. The whispers from the stream carried tiny fragments of forgotten thoughts, half-spoken words, and silent wishes. She cupped her hands in the water, letting the cool liquid slide between her fingers. Each drop left a tiny echo in her mind, a memory of joy, sorrow, or quiet wonder she had not known she needed. The forest seemed endless yet safe, as if it had grown around her specifically to guide her through its hidden wonders. She saw flowers with petals made of spun silver, rocks that hummed with the faint echo of distant conversations, and birds whose wings left trails of soft, glowing light. As she wandered, the whispers began to gather around her again, soft and melodic, as though inviting her to follow. They guided her to a small hill from which she could see the entire valley. The village lay bathed in golden light, the stream catching the morning sun and the trees swaying gently in the breeze. Every sound was sharper now, clearer, yet soft and soothing. A chorus of whispers returned to their rightful place. Ilara realized something profound. By freeing the whispers, she had not only restored the voices of the forgotten, but had opened a gateway to a world that existed just alongside the waking one. A world filled with magic, memory, and quiet wonder. She settled on the hill, letting the warmth of the sunlight and the hum of the whispers fill her entirely. The forest around her shimmered, pulsing gently in response to her presence. She closed her eyes, breathing in the harmony of the whispered world, letting it carry her into a deep, peaceful calm. The whispers had returned to the world, yet they had left a part of themselves with her. A quiet, glowing connection to life, memory, and dream. And Ilara knew softly that she would never walk alone in the forest again. Ilara stayed on the hill long after the sun had risen, listening to the whispers settle into the rhythm of the waking world. But even as the village stirred below, the pull of the hidden realms tugged gently at her, soft and persistent. She rose and followed a narrow path that had appeared overnight, made of woven light and soft silvery moss. The air around her shimmered like heat over a summer lake, bending reality into subtle curves she could feel rather than see. Every step seemed to hum, a quiet pulse that guided her deeper into the forest. The trees here were older, taller, and their bark glimmered faintly, inscribed with patterns that shifted when she looked too long. They whispered in voices without words, drawing her forward. And as she walked, the forest opened into a place she had never imagined. A valley where the ground itself was a translucent crystal, and rivers of golden light flowed in silent arcs across the horizon. Floating above the ground were orbs of faint glow. Each one carried a memory, a forgotten touch, a whispered secret, a dream that had faded before it could be spoken aloud. When she reached out, the orbs responded, drifting closer, wrapping around her wrists, shoulders, and hair. Their voices were soft, harmonious, and endlessly soothing, filling her with warmth she had never known. Ilara realized she could hear layers of sound all at once. The whispers of the villagers, the echoes of the forest, and now, the deep murmurs of the world itself, the life that had been waiting patiently for her to return it. Each note was gentle, deliberate, like a lullaby composed over centuries. She wandered deeper, discovering landscapes more surreal than the last. Hills of soft mist rose like waves, forests of glass trees sang when the wind brushed through them, and pools of water reflected not the sky, but the unseen threads of memory, stretching endlessly. Some shapes were familiar, like distant childhood dreams, and some were entirely strange, landscapes that seemed to exist only to hum quietly in the silence. Along one crystalline river, she saw a figure waiting. It shimmered like liquid starlight, tall and flowing, its form shifting with every movement. When it spoke, the sound was like the river itself, gentle, flowing, infinite. "You have come far," it said. "Few have ever walked here, and fewer still have listened as deeply as you." "I don't know what I am," Alara whispered. "I only know that I hear." "That is enough," the figure replied. "To hear is to understand, to hold is to forget. You have learned the balance." The figure drifted closer, and in its presence the whispers swirled around her like a soft wind. They were memories of entire lives, conversations never finished, songs never sung, and dreams left unclaimed. They moved through her gently, and she felt no weight, only the warmth of their presence. "You may rest here," the figure said, "or you may continue, but remember, the world remembers you as you have remembered it." Alara felt a deep calm settle over her. The valley, the rivers, the floating memories, all of it hummed with life, soft and endless. She lay down on the crystal grass, letting the whispers cradle her. She could feel the world breathing beneath her, a rhythm that was not hers alone but shared with everything that had ever whispered or been whispered to. Her eyelids grew heavy. The soft glow of the valley dimmed to a gentle pulse, and the whispers wrapped around her like a blanket of sound. Every heartbeat, every sigh, every forgotten word was a note in a lullaby that had no end. And in that place, suspended between memory and dream, Alara drifted into the deepest, most peaceful sleep she had ever known. A sleep where the whispered world sang around her, and she, for the first time, was truly part of it. The stars above shimmered faintly as if smiling. The forest beyond the valley rested, and the whispers finally were free.